Welcome to today's Capital Program Committee meeting. It is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. And I want to take a roll call vote for committee members and staff if we can. So we all know who's here. I'm Jill V, Chairman.
Pete Kaiser, Vice Chairman.
Christy Kickham.
John Kitchener.
And staff. Oh, Susan Carmel. And Mike Burns.
Mike Burns, with the Nantucket Planning Economic Development Commission.
Excellent. Just a reminder, this is a recording, audio and video, so let's all try to be respectful and mindful of that, because this will appear on the town's YouTube page, which I was watching you guys today, going back to another meeting, and yes, you all looked wonderful. It was wonderful.
Were we respectful?
You were. I felt very respectful, so let's keep it going.
Yeah.
Can I get an approval of can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And on the motion, Peter.
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Aye.
Jill, aye. Do we have anybody on for public comment? I can't. No public comment. We're going to move into the request. I see that Drew, our valiant DPW director, is on.
And
Good.
late, sorry guys.
It's fine. I'm super late to this party myself, so.
I clicked the Teams link, not the Zoom link, and so I was waiting, and knowing the history of the IT issues in 131 Pleasant Street meeting trailer, I assumed you guys were trying to get online yourselves. So sorry about that.
I did notice you used Teams the other day, and I was like, oh, no.
Aye.
We're gonna, no, it's okay. I thought maybe the town would have some rule like, oh, you have to use Zoom. I guess not. So, Drew, we can go ahead and jump right into your request if you would like to. I've got mine pulled up on my screen. I don't know if you guys
This
have
is
yours.
the Central Fleet.
No,
No.
this is transportation only is what I understand
Okay.
for today.
Yes.
And so Drew, if you would like to get started, I'll leave it with you for what order you want to go in.
Sure. So I'll get started with the annual roadworks appropriations, and so there's 6 total. 4 of them are part of our annual roadworks program, and then there's 2 project specific capital requests. So every year we have sidewalk improvement plan, island-wide road improvements, multi-use path maintenance, and cobblestone improvements. So those are generally adjusted by 2 or 3% every year. The only outlier this year is the island-wide road improvements. Historically, going from FY22 to 25, the appropriations were 1.25 million, 2 million, 2 million, and then 3 million. I believe we need to invest, obviously, in our road infrastructure. But for FY26, the request is back down to $2 million. And I just wanted to highlight that because it's really a result of all of the projects that we have going on currently and pretty soon here on the horizon, including the sewer force main project, which starting in the next couple of weeks is getting into their final paving, which is probably going to take at least 12, maybe 18 months to do, I don't know, sidewalks and cobblestone replacement and a lot of paving essentially from C Street all the way down to the sewer treatment plant on South Shore Road. Excuse me. Additionally, I think the airport just wrapped up a big project. I'm not entirely sure what they have very soon on the horizon. But additionally, there's a water main extension west of the airport. But more than anything, we have a couple projects coming up that we're looking to bid before the end of the calendar year, including the Surfside area transportation improvements. So that's Lovers, Monahans, and Orkawa, and Newtown Road reconstruction. Obviously, 2 roadway projects, Surfside Road being a pretty considerable size project that we expect to take about 2 years to complete. Additionally, Mass DOT just awarded a contract to do the Pulpus at Milestone intersection work, which is a considerable amount of paving and a new bike path from Monomoy Road out to the Pulpus bike path where it connects with Milestone. So just in thinking of all the projects we have going on, I wanted to be realistic about what we think we'll be able to accomplish. We obviously only have the one paving contractor on island, so I felt it was appropriate to go from $3 million this fiscal year to $2 million next fiscal year. Sidewalks, the multi-use path maintenance and cobblestones are in line with the annual adjustments that we've seen over the last number of years. So I guess I'll stop now and see if there's any questions about our annual roadworks before we get into the project specific capital requests.
Anybody have any questions?
Right now, I was just gonna ask if, can you just give the code preceding?
Sure.
Yeah, if you just give the codes, because I don't have my paperwork, so I'm just relying on that to
Yeah,
kind of find my way.
I couldn't find what you were talking about without that either.
Sure, sorry about that. So the code for sidewalk improvement plan is transportation 17-001. Island-wide road improvements, Tran 17-002. Multi-use path maintenance is Tran 20-001, and cobblestones is Tran -20-002.
I don't know if this is the case for everybody here, but what's happened for me is that when I just put in DPW space transportation, all those requests come up because Sue is just putting them into the system, I believe, as we're getting them.
Yeah, I've got it all here, but it's all years, because if I just put 26, it doesn't.
I just go to Rory's and my open Rory's and then I put them in.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
So instead of capital requests, I search it through the Rory's.
okay.
Because yeah, the capital request will give you more information from other years,
Search.
or that's my experience.
So that is, what is that then, friends?
You could just put in DPW.
Or just, yeah, Tran, TRAN.
Mhm.
You just have to open the search function on your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, John, to your point, or I think you might have just mentioned, so like Island Wide Road Improvements is an annual request that started back in 2017. So hence, if you're just looking at Tran-26s, you're not gonna find that
Yeah.
one because despite the fact that it's 2026 request, it's coded as of the first time the request was made, which is, we've always tried to figure out a better way to identify, but because it can be confusing, you know,
Is
you're
the
looking at a
odd-
17 for this year, an 18 for this year, a 20 for this year.
It is the oddest thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
So
Joe, I have a
just-
question for you,
Okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
which is, you mentioned the big Lover's Lane Surfside Road Monahasset project. And that might be going out to bid. And I know that you have received funding for that. Do you anticipate coming back to ask for more funding in the future?
Oof, we certainly hope not. We've already come back, the town did before my time with the town, for a pretty substantial supplemental funding. And I know I mentioned it to you on Tuesday when we caught up about these projects. I got $3.2 million approved from Mass DOT's Chapter 90 program to help pay for it. Unfortunately, public bidding is always a bit of a risk, so I guess we'll never know until we open the bids. We spent a lot of time with the designer evaluating the best way to not only get the best finished product, but make it so that it's most efficient for the contractor and hopefully keep costs down. So whether we pulverize and basically reclaim in place the existing road base and shift it over to get the proper sub base for the road, it would need to be blended with additional crushed stone. So there's a lot of hauling and handling of the materials. And long story short, we figured out that it's actually a little bit cheaper and way quicker and provides a much better finished product if we bring in dense graded gravel for the sub base in lieu of what's existing, especially on Lovers where there's no asphalt road base to be pulverized into the existing road bed. And then, another thing we're hoping helps in terms of the overall cost is bidding these together. At one point, going back many moons, the intent was to basically have a 4-phased project, and phase 1 was the boulevard. By bundling Lovers, Monahasset, and Orikawa together, we expect to have some large, very reputable contractors pretty hungry for this work. And hopefully keeping a fairly sharp pencil. If we phased it out and did Lovers this year, Orcawa in a year or two, Montahanson in a year or two after that, it would not only take up 5-6 years to complete all these, but we think that the cost by the time we get 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road is going to be considerably more. So I guess we'll see. I certainly hope we don't need to come back for another supplemental funding for this project.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Thank you for that.
No, so that gives the contractor certainty or a degree of certainty anyway for a multi-year workload, I guess, right? That,
Right.
yeah, which is worth a lot.
Yeah. And I think it also lends itself to a much better finished product when there's continuity between the construction of one road, the next, and they're obviously pretty closely intertwined, being adjacent to one another. So there's a lot of drainage improvements and new bike path. And so we're very excited about the project. I guess, like I said, price wise, I guess you never see until you open the bids. We expect to bid that before the end of the calendar year. Hopefully starting construction in the spring.
Great.
May I ask a question about bike paths in general? Because it's related.
Well, do you want to wait till he talks about the bike path? Because he's gonna
Yeah, okay,
talk about
okay.
that next
Yeah.
with the Tom Nevers. I think you're talking about that next. Sorry. Is that right, Drew?
Yeah. If there's no more questions about the annual roadworks, we can certainly.
I have a quick one, yeah, if I may, through the chair.
You may.
Through the
Vice
chair to make it easy for the minutes. PKs are here, for island-wide road improvement, so looked like we had 2 million in 23, 2 million in 24, 3 million in 25, and then back down to 2 million at the current ask, and then up to 3.5 in 27. Just any insight into that kind of volatility of the requests? Are we still spending some of last year's money right now? So it's a 2 million request, and then we're anticipating next year to get back up to where we would have been if we had kind of linear annual increases.
Yeah, we are still essentially spending some of last year's money, but like I mentioned earlier, there's just a number of roadway projects and then other utility projects like water and sewer projects that require a lot of final paving. And I just want to be realistic about what we're actually going to be able to accomplish in that fiscal year and not request money that we know we're not going to be able to spend. We have one asphalt contractor on the island. I think with all of these utility projects, roadway projects, and even private work, there's a lot of private, utility work, and subdivisions and things, and that all comes from the same asphalt plant. So as a community, we kind of have a capacity limit. And so, like I said, I think for FY26, that's a realistic number. I'll admit, as far as the FY27, that 3.5, I think that's something I wouldn't say it is reflected at this time. I will reassess that based on how these projects go and how much progress gets made, so that it might be $2 million again for FY27 if things haven't kind of changed and projects haven't closed up between now and then.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you.
There's gonna be a lot of paving between C Street and South.
Of course.
Anybody else? All right, Drew, you want to keep going?
Sure. So the Tom Nevers multi-use path, this is a supplemental funding ask, but it is for the final design and construction portion of the project, including property acquisitions and easement takings and damages. $331,000 was the original appropriation at the 2019 annual town meeting. Weston and Sampson is the designer, and they I believe their contract still has about 40% left on it. I know Mike Burns has been intimately involved in this project for a couple of years now, and recently has been spending a lot of time working on coordinating with abutters along the route and working with Weston and Sampson to advance the preliminary design. And so the ask is for that next phase for actual implementation of the bike path.
Gotcha. I'm looking at the cost estimate for acquisition. And so am I reading that right? That's $2.3 million?
Potentially, yes. I think that's a little bit conservative, but we want to be realistic about what may be a significant cost as part of the project for the easements necessary to install the bike path from Milestone all the way to the Tom Nevers Park or Navy base.
Right,
Is that the 2.3 million?
that's what I'm seeing for
Yeah.
land acquisition.
Land, right, that's land acquisition.
Yeah, not the project.
I know
How
Mike,
How far along are you with that? Cause I know that takes so much time.
with the design or the easement taking process and all that.
Yeah, the taking process.
Mike, you want to jump in?
Well, I want to say
Sure.
acquisition process.
We, in order to meet the deadline for this capital request, we basically assumed there would be no donated easements and that what we had at the preliminary stage was the maximum amount of area that would be needed for easements. So that's what we used for calculations. This past summer, July, August, and September, we've been coordinating with various abutters to see what, one, the willingness is to donate, and number two, do we need to make any design modifications? And we have collected some suggestions, and the easement area could be reduced or will very likely be reduced based on some comments we received. And it's very split about willingness to donate. So we probably won't be able to whittle that down too much, but we do need to have appraisals done on the value of that land and to get the proper estimates. So this is a not to exceed an amount. So maybe the 2.3 is not necessarily going to be spent on acquisitions. It'll be some amount less than that. So
How long do you expect that to take?
we hope to have a preferred recommendation before town meeting on what the preferred alignment would be. So we would have a very good idea about the area that we need to acquire and the easements we need to acquire. Once authorization is given for this budget for damage awards, then we would actually go through the process of doing the eminent domain taking. That takes about 3 months to notify the abutters, hold the public hearing, to see if there's comments. If there are comments, which inevitably there are, you hold over for another month. So it's about a 3-month window to actually do the eminent domain process. And then after that, we would have control of the real estate and could move forward with any type of construction activity.
Is it, and forgive my ignorance, Mike and Drew, but is it common for you to keep moving forward before you have that in place?
What we're doing right now is preliminary design to understand what the easement area is, and then coordinate with the abutters to see what willingness to donate there is. So I think we have to have that in order to get to the town to establish a budget. So I think we've at least know what the not to exceed amount budget is going to be for the land acquisitions. It shouldn't be more than this. In fact, I'd be shocked if it was more.
Yeah.
So we need to do some preliminary work.
At the same time as reaching out to the homeowners. And I didn't know that you did it at the same time. I mean, I just didn't know how that process works.
Yeah, for this, I think we
Mine costs a
may.
lot.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have the preferred alignment and more of a refined preliminary design before we go to final design. In order to meet the deadline for this town meeting, because we wouldn't want to wait another year because we'd finalize the work in the spring, miss it, wait for an entire year for another town meeting to actually go to the quest. We're trying to be a little efficient with the timing of this. And I hope it's acceptable to establish a not to exceed amount for the land acquisitions so that we have a budget to work with and actually do that.
Yeah, and I think to your question, Jill, as part of the Surfside project, for example, we're finalizing the easement taking as we speak. We've already got 100% design submittal. So that process was preliminary design and then refining the design, doing that final design effort, and then getting the authorization to take the easements at last special town meeting. And now we are basically recording the easements right before we put it out to bid.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it just seems like if you're spending a lot of money on something you don't know, but I guess you're gonna get it because you always can use eminent domain. Do you mind if I ask how much of these projects end up going to eminent domain, or you get agreement from the homeowners? I just don't know, so I'm asking a broad.
Yeah, that
question.
process for me too. I'm very
I mean, I know
And-
that's how that's worked here on the island. That's why we have the bike paths, but,
In 20 years of doing these, it's fairly split. I think early on, there was the appetite of seeking nothing but donations from abutters so that there would be no damage awards, but that was very time consuming and required a lot of design modifications to get the donation, right? You put in the split rail, the landscaping that's being asked for, privet or whatever it is. In order to avoid that, the attitude of recent years has been the abutters want the path so much that they really don't care. Like, just tell me what you need me to do and I'll donate whatever you need within reason. That's not a shared attitude, I guess, across every, so it's fairly split. We never really get 100% donations these days. But frankly, it's unless it was like the Hummock Pond Road bike path, which again, because that was a challenge grant, if you recall, there was a $500,000 that was going to be donated if we have it built effectively usable
Yeah.
path by 2009, something like this.
Oh,
We
that's
went
right.
through the eminent domain and just said, listen, I know you want to donate, but we have to do the eminent domain taking and then offer you damages. You can collect the damages if you want it, but we have to offer you a damage just for time reasons. Like, we have to have the land secured within the next 3 months. We don't have the time to mess with the donation process.
I gotcha. Okay.
And frankly, not everyone collected their damage awards. Some people just didn't want the money.
Oh,
So they wait their
Interesting.
7 years and then it goes back to it expires.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. That is. Anyone else with any questions?
I just got a
about-
question.
Yeah, Christy?
I'm just curious. I know when we say bike paths, we're like, most of the time they're on the edge of a road. Once in a while, they might be off the road somewhere. Are we looking to, for sure, have this follow the road, or could this come down Milestone a little bit farther to, I can't remember what that road is into the neighborhood, but sort of kind of follow a different way? And is the idea to just basically get people to the fairgrounds area? Or is it to have travel along that road?
Right now, for you're talking about Tom Nevers
Yeah.
Road path. Right now, there's an option for a separated path with at least a 6-foot buffer, like a traditional path would be you'd find on islands, the grass strip. That's our preferred alignment. And then we did, through negotiation with the butters, entertain a couple of other alternatives that would reduce right-of-way impacts. Again, we're kind of, I don't want to say we're putting the cart before the horse here, but we're trying to establish a budget and not to exceed amounts. And if another alternative that reduces right-of-way impacts is selected, that's just going to be the budget that we're not going to use. This amount is the maximum amount of impact and a not to exceed amount for damage awards.
Right.
With a final alignment to be determined, hopefully sometime between now and town meeting.
Yeah, got it. And I'm sorry if I missed this when you guys first started discussing this item. Is this amount include acquisition?
Yes.
Appraisal and acquisition.
Yeah, you don't know what the separation is, do you? Half and half, or is it?
It's like 40-60.
What is, yeah,
Versus construction cost.
Yeah,
So it's $2.3 million for acquisitions and a total ask of 6.8.
And
I
paid
I can do the math.
and it's in there on the number,
Okay.
it's in there,
Alright.
so you can see it, they highlight it.
I mean, Mike, when did this first get on the list for bike paths? I
Oh,
mean,
ages ago, right?
yeah,
Tom Nevers, I think, was first identified in like 76.
Yeah.
Again, there was a prioritized list. You can't do everything all at once.
yeah, I know it. I
So
mean, just nuts.
You mean that's that they haven't done it yet?
Well, just, it's just crazy, the amount, everything just gets, it doesn't just get more expensive, it gets more expensive exponentially.
Yeah.
Every single year.
it does.
Yeah.
seem that way.
Just gotta, it's a tough one, because, just can't fund everything,
And
but we gotta keep in mind, what do we not wanna pay more for down the road?
But we also have to keep in mind that we don't have the staff to run 400 projects. I mean, Drew doesn't have the team to run every project he needs to run all at the same time. He's got to prioritize that.
No, I know, yeah.
It's hard.
And I mean, also every year that goes by, it's not just the same amount of projects that get more expensive, more projects get added in and compete for time and resources every year that goes by, so.
Mhm.
And, Matt,
Yeah, but- Okay.
so you guys said the first appropriation was 2019, and that's when design work started on this.
There was a feasibility report that was done to see what permitting needs would be needed. So after that was done, I want to say 2020, that was finished. Then design actually initiated with Weston Sampson to actually go out into the field, do survey work, and come up with preferred alignments for the path.
Got it, and so that was based on, what was it, a $300,000 or $500,000 original appropriation?
It was, the original appropriation was 331,000.
331, so they've been stretching that money for the last 6 years now, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Four,
and that-
four,
And
four,
Mike,
five.
wasn't there didn't somebody have a citizen warrant article, I wanna say in 15 or 16 to do the bike path? Out in Tom Everest, there wasn't a warrant article for that? No,
15 or 6, that might have been just a capital request for the the 331,000.
I remember it coming up at town meeting and then standing up and talking about it, so.
Well-
And that family, I'm blanking on the name, but they don't live here anymore, so.
Oh.
But they were very much in favor of it.
I guess my only question regarding the timing, so. Was this put on hold for any amount of years, or did it get delayed because of COVID? I mean, it seems like that's a long time between original appropriation and, coming back finally for kind of. Construction and is 6 years typically how long this process would take?
Generally for a project from idea to construction, we typically say 10 years. From like, this is the idea, and let's go through the process. Let's start
But
doing the
first-
design work, and
Starting to spend the money, I mean.
it can happen as little as 5 years. That's lightning speed. That's
Yeah.
basically what Hummock Pond Road got done in about 5 years.
Got it. So this is pretty expected average run of the mill.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
And I would say it's probably in the envy of the eyes of a lot of other communities, because these
Yeah.
I say 10 years, but some other communities, it may be like 15.
Thank you, John?
Yeah, Mike. When you think about, all of the issues that have gone on lately around e-bikes and on bike paths, off bike paths and so forth. My question is, in the design of a bike path, is anything around e-bikes causing us to change the specification of what a bike path should look like, say in terms of width, and in particular, where the bike path meets driveways and so forth? Is there anything about that is going on? And if it is it reflected in the cost that we're looking at?
Well, first thing regarding cost, the width of the path that we're working with here on a shared use path is 10 feet. In some communities where they know that the activity is going to be much greater, like if there was a path done through, I don't know, Central Park or somewhere in the Emerald Necklace in Boston, something like that, heavily used pathway, they go to like more 15 feet for a path. So we don't do that here. That would be much more impactful to properties and for costs. Just as far as the design of the path and for speeds of bicyclists, they're designed for about 20 miles per hour, curvature and whatnot. So if you're going to do a curve in a path, it's got to be no more than, I forget, like 30-foot radius can be the most aggressive curve on a path, assuming a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit for a bicycle. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but class 1 and 2 e-bikes are permitted in Massachusetts to use paths. Class 1 and 2 e-bikes, the maximum speed you can achieve with those is 20 miles an hour, so it's conducive. I think where you run into problems is if you have some of the class 3 e-bikes, which is the higher speed, higher performance, they can go 28 miles an hour. And they are not allowed on paths, but they may end up on a path, and that's where you might run into issues, along with regular road bikes, somebody doing training that can go much faster than a typical bicycle can. That's another issue that, probably belong on the roadway. These class threes absolutely belong on a roadway. A lot of the training, the people who bike to train, probably belong in the roadway as well, and not those aren't conducive for bike traffic, bike path traffic.
Yeah, the reason for my question is that, given all this work and, you know, a fair amount of cost, you know, does it make sense, whether it's regulatory required or not, to think about, you know, to stay with that 10 feet or something different, especially I guess with Tom Nevers, because is that going to be, from what you said earlier to I think PJ's question, is it going to be like a fairly straight like milestone? You know, it's not going to, or is it going to be a curvy? Because if it's a dead straight one, you know, it's probably going to end up a bit of a racetrack.
Yeah, I think if you looked at the alignment of the path we used to establish this right of way, it's a very, very straight path along Tom Nevers until you get about to Old Tom Nevers Road. The design changes we've requested based on some feedback with the butters, there would be some curvature in the alignment around utility poles, and just to wrap around the back of the utility pole and then align the path closer to the roadway to reduce residential impacts. So that's where you're going to see the curvature, is to avoid utilities. Beyond that, there's really not a lot of room except for that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Except
I
for
just
that one section of land bank property.
Look at the extra cost of a little more width now is probably, well, it would be impossible to do it later, I guess. So, and then the other part of that question was like where the bike path is meeting driveways. Are we thinking about anything different about that because of the speed of, you know, e-bikes? Because, you know, the 20-mile-an-hour thing, I guess with normal bicycles, yes, some people sometimes get to 20 miles an hour. With e-bikes, a lot of people are hitting 20 miles an hour for quite a bit of the time. And it's just, you know, I'm just trying to understand whether we are looking to acknowledge any of that or not in the way that we build bike paths later on. And if the answer is no, we're not, that's fine, I guess. But
Well, actually, can I jump in and follow on that? Mike, maybe you can explain about how the state looks at the paths, because I know you call them multi-use paths. We don't even call them bike paths anymore.
They're all interchangeable. It all means the same thing. Shared use path, multi-use path, bike path.
Yeah, but how does the state require you to look at a multi-use path to accommodate what? Maybe that would be helpful to understand. Rather than, you know, it's a multi-use, but it's not just a multi-use path just for the e-bikes is what I mean. It's really.
but I mean, all this is evolving and it's all getting a little quicker and
Yeah, it does, but
and more use.
I'm sure, you know, I'm sure BPAC, they were gonna make some recommendations to changes, I think, for the speed limit and some other regulations.
Like, I don't want to waste a lot of time on it, Mike. If the answer is, you know what, John, we're just going to do what we've always done, that's fine. But
Just regarding driveways, the safest treatment is to ensure that there's plenty of sight distance from anyone exiting a driveway, crossing the path. And with this project, the temporary easement is essentially 5 feet of area on the backside of the path for all clearing, so that there's sufficient sight distance as somebody's leaving their driveway. Hopefully they're not leaving their driveway at an, you know, ridiculous speed without paying attention. That there's actually care being used to cross, but to ensure that there's plenty of sight distance, we are cutting back vegetation 5 feet from the back edge of the path. And that's part of the temporary easement.
okay.
Oh, that's good to
I
know.
got a question, Jill.
So I was just gonna add to that quickly. The state law is that if a vehicle is exiting a driveway or street, they are required to come to a stop before they get to a bike path or a sidewalk. And that's important for motor vehicle operators to understand. But the last thing, just to John's question about the design, the overwhelming majority, if not almost all of our bike paths out here are 8 feet wide. So going to a 10-foot width in this corridor, I think is an improvement over the quintessential, like what we do out here on Nantucket. I think, yeah, in a perfect world, they'd all be 10 feet. So I think that is kind of a proactive.
Yeah, that's great, Bruce. Thank you. Yeah.
Very
So I
helpful.
just got a
Christie?
question. Just something to think about, you guys. I don't know if, I mean, it's good to hear that the responsibility really lies with the vehicle leaving the property, you know, but would it be in our best interest to maybe at the start, middle, and maybe end of bike paths to post signage to let people know the reliability is on the vehicles exiting driveways, to use caution. Just something to sort of present that to people that are cycling on our bike paths. I just think it would be an easy, inexpensive thing to do, but it would be, you know, we've certainly had accidents on bike paths.
On Tom Nevers Road.
And I just think it would be a good sort of thing for the town to do, just to present that, you know, people do, you know they come up to driveways and cars shoot out, but to put it in writing as people enter a bike path, I think would be just a mindful thing for the town to do.
To alert the bicyclists that they're.
Correct.
Caution cars entering
Correct.
and exiting.
Correct, and just say, you know, just, it might be a short paragraph, says the responsibility is for the people leaving the driveway. With that said, use caution as you approach driveways, you know, this way. Wherever liability lies, we're just doing our due diligence in informing people that obviously this is certainly an issue and has been. That's all.
I don't even know if I'd include the first part, if people might stop reading and say, well, I'm okay, great.
Yeah, or something to that tune. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
no,
think,
I think that's a good, I think that's a great point. We've had a number of conversations, even just recently, about the best way to go about signage. And if you have sign pollution, people pay attention to none of the signs.
Yeah.
There is a bylaw that allows the town to basically make the decision to continue to have stop signs at major intersections. And the way we read it is, if you're going down Matticat Road, the major intersections are street to street intersections, and minor intersections are driveways to the street.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that's a good point. How do you make them a little bit more aware that, you know,
Correct.
that driveways are also not, you know, they're not just harmless because it's a nice little shell driveway, for example. With
Yeah,
that said, I think on Tom Nevers Road, of all roads, probably is a good example of, if in a perfect world you're going to pick one side of the road, which side would you pick? The bike path is going to be on the north or east side of the road, where there's very few driveway crossings until you get past Nevers Road, which is just a fortunate, you know, it's great that we have the opportunity. Whereas on the other side, it's Arlington, Berkeley, Clarendon, Dartmouth. That's a lot of intersections that fortunately we don't have to cross.
Well, and they're steep to go down those roads too.
yeah. I mean, it's the difference between Milestone and Pulpus Road is huge, you know?
Yeah.
Think about those.
Definitely.
Anyway,
Yeah, can I just put in for that? One thing I love about Pulpus Bike Path is the trees, Drew, as you were talking about the trees in it, so that you can kind of hide for a little bit. From
Yeah,
the cars.
yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So I not only want a 10-foot bike path, I want 10 feet to the road.
10 foot
That's
buffer.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You heard it here first, guys.
I love that moment on Pulpus. It's so pretty. Okay, anybody else with any other questions?
Like that?
No, I think this looks good. And you want to talk about Pleasant Street now?
Sure. I'm probably not going to add a whole heck of a lot to this discussion. I'll let Mike take over in a moment, but this capital appropriation or capital request would be for final design of improvements on Pleasant Street from Five Corners all the way to the roundabout at Lake Hooper Farm. This is a difficult corridor to figure out really what the preferred alternative is and improvements should be. And Mike's been working with Beta Group for a number of years on this and has developed alternatives, brought them to BPAC, Traffic Safety Work Group. And actually, Mike, are we presenting next week this project for the select board?
Yes, for the piloting of the one-way, seeking authorization for piloting that one section of Pleasant Street as one-way.
Yeah, to inform kind of the decision and direction for final design for this corridor.
Yeah, Drew, you might want to tell everybody here what that plan is, just so that they're.
Sure, Mike, again, if I'm going, or if I misspeak, just jump right in, but this project also kind of goes hand in hand with an analysis of Sparks Ave, Williams Lane, kind of that whole area of Mid Island, and traffic studies were done to understand where vehicles are traveling in all directions on all these streets, including side streets. And there is a suggestion that the best way to accommodate a bike path, bike lane, sidewalk, those are the different options, would be to go one way, essentially the whole length. But the more challenging area, I think conceptually for a lot of folks, is from Williams Lane or Williams Street, really, when you come up from Cumberland Farms out to Five Corners. We have a unique opportunity in the next couple of months where the sewer CMOM project is going to be doing sewer work between, I forget the exact intersecting streets, but kind of right in that quarter. So they're going to have it shut off from Williams Street to Five Corners. We kind of just saw it as an opportunity to, it's going to be a full road closure for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two. When they are complete, they do their final or temporary paving, we'd like to open it up as a one-way only to begin, because people are going to be used to the road being shut down in both directions. You open it one way for a couple of weeks, see how it goes, see how the local community reacts to it and responds, and use that to, again, kind of inform the direction with the final design. So rather than showing up with a pilot project or pilot, one-way configuration that is kind of jarring to people, to have it shut down for a while and then open one lane and then open the other lane, and we just kind of saw as a good opportunity to give it a try and see how it works. And that feedback will obviously be invaluable in terms of deciding
What to do.
how to accommodate, those pedestrians and cyclists going forward, because there's no accommodation for either at the moment.
Just if I could give my 2 cents. So you're talking use existing roadway for a bike lane, considering, and have it be a one-way, one either direction. Is that right?
That is one of the alternatives, yes.
I would think that that's a tricky one, but I would think until you redo the high school intersection with either a rotary roundabout to manage the traffic coming up that street there, I don't know what that is by the outdoor power. That's gonna be a tough one. Because what I think is gonna happen is that will back down to Pleasant Street, and now you're gonna have traffic depending which way it's going.
So, I should be clear, it would be one way to Five Corners.
From
Yeah.
outdoor power to Five Corners going towards Five Corners.
Right.
Correct, I get it. Yeah, I think people coming down Pleasant Street are gonna most of them are gonna shoot up. I don't know what that street is.
Atlantic?
It's Williams Lane.
Williams.
Is that Williams Lane that goes up,
Williams that goes-
that attaches Pleasant to Sparks?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, you already have traffic halfway down it.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. You're going it's
So
in
yeah,
that
this isn't
direction.
gonna
It's
change
in that
that.
direction.
So this isn't
Right.
gonna improve traffic going north on Pleasant Street. It's just gonna allow for bicycles to make that Williams Lane to Five Corners more safely.
It would accommodate pedestrians and cyclists between outdoor power and Five Corners.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to improve that.
So you would now probably have some backup on Atlantic Ave
Exactly.
where you never actually do.
Yeah. It's like the quickest way to get
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Mike was intimately involved with beta and the modeling and the data and all that. I think that's the argument, right? Is that Atlantic Ave is not that heavily traveled. And so pushing some more cars of people coming westbound on Pleasant out of downtown
Mhm.
and not being able to head to Stop and Shop via Pleasant, but have to go Atlantic and then Sparks, actually doesn't overburden that intersection.
Yeah,
I kind of had the same thought, and I talked about it with Mike and the design team from Beta Group. I kind of thought, well, when when the volume is high enough, it may, what's the best way to put this? It may make the most sense to have like a roundabout at Four Corners to accommodate the additional traffic you're putting into it. The data doesn't, I don't think necessarily necessitate that. But we would like to do the pilot and see how it goes, and especially if it's in the off season. If it doesn't work in the off season, we know it's not going to work in the summer.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you trying to do something before you come back with a big number to ask us to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to get in the minds of people, but Pete?
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, and it's easy to think, if I was driving, if I look at this map, what do I think will happen? But obviously there's a lot of data and a lot of data gathering and analysis and industry knowledge, let's say, that goes behind a lot of these decisions. So, I mean, that makes it a little bit more comforting, more than just thinking to myself, all right, if you cut off traffic coming down Pleasant, then it's gonna go this way, and then it's gonna cause more, obviously that's all been accounted for, and to a certain extent, you can't take the variability of human behavior completely into account, but yeah, it's comforting to know that that's part of the suggestions that are being made.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, data will tell you one thing, like you said, humans always kind of, will potentially do something that isn't supported by numbers, in a model. I think so it's an opportunity to understand what that does to the side streets like New Lane, Cherry Street, things like that, and folks on those roads and kind of get their experience. That similarly, there's always a couple times a year discussion about whether Gardner Street should be one way, but whether Gardner Street in one direction or the other works for a lot of people. I think a big part of that calculation as to why one way doesn't really work in either direction is the folks that live between India and Maine on the streets from basically center out to Gardner, and what that does to their circulation, basically forcing a lot of people back into downtown before they go out, for example. Yeah, the idea is to do a pilot, figure out if it works, and then make a decision.
Anybody else?
No.
Okay,
That's all of them for fiscal year 26.
that's it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Drew. Does anybody else want to ask me?
I have a general question.
Sure, Christie.
Drew, I'm just curious, when we get I'm puzzled by, like, when you said just a bit ago, paving, and then you corrected yourself, you said temporary paving. So, I know that we sort of might pave for the season and then know we're gonna dig it back up. And I'm wondering, we put all this money aside for paving, and it's not often that I feel like we've paved a road that is now finished and complete. Because it seems like it always looks unfinished, and I just was curious at what kind of quality of work are we getting when we're talking paving? Because if you look at, take for example,
Atlantic.
like Atlantic, say the sidewalk in Atlantic Street, it's
Or Gardner.
It's the S word. But it's really, it's half the size of what it's used to be. It's got a big, it's just, I see on Gardner.
Lily and.
Yeah, Gardner I like because it allows people to sort of ride up a little bit instead of that big curb. So that does work. Initially I was like, not sure about it, but it does work for that area because it's so tight. But I'm just curious, what's the quality of paving that we're getting? Because it just seems really haphazard, like edges seem unfinished. Are they prepping as they should? Or are they just kind of getting by, putting a layer on, and then we've got to resurface it in 6 years? So just something to think about. It's just something I've sort of recognized and noticed, and I just wanted to ask you about it because I was curious.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to speak to that. To be honest, I said this to Jill the other day, back in February, I went to California and did a road trip. I was on the road a lot. The nicest roads were in Yosemite. It's a tourist destination. They have money, they invest in their infrastructure. You go through Modesto, San Francisco, Monterey cities, they're constantly being worked on, and they're in terrible shape. To be honest, it made me very proud of our roads when I travel off island. I think there's a couple things that I want to mention. One is like Atlantic right now, that's just temporary pavement. Well, it's really the binder course. It's not complete. So the curb is sticking up very high on the north or west side of the road. And that sidewalk is asphalt for now. And that curbing will go back and sidewalk will go back. That's just temporary because the force main project went through there. They did water, sewer, drainage, and a force main. And they're doing that on all of these roads as part of the sewer project. When I corrected myself earlier about temporary paving, N&M Excavating will put sewer in Pleasant Street. They're going to dig, I think it's like 8 or 9 feet down. they backfill after they put the pipe in, and they do a temporary pavement. Traditionally, we make sure that the final pavement doesn't go down until a minimum of 90 days after that to allow for settlement. And then it's either milled and overlaid, or it's completely reclaimed in place and then overlaid. For example, we did that on Vesper Lane as part of the Shimo sewer project past the high school. I think that's held up really, really well. There was a lot of trenches in that road. We pulverized the entire thing and overlaid it. I think the quality of the asphalt is great. I think the workmanship is great. And I know there's always, like, I always find it a little comical, go to special town meeting, there's nothing DPW related. And someone will say, there's potholes all over the place. And
Yeah.
if you look closely, I think a lot of the potholes and the degradation of our roads are at utility trenches. Someone needed a new electrical service, someone needed to reconnect to the sewer line, and I get that they have to, replace aging infrastructure. But a lot of that stuff, I almost feel like, and this is the best way to describe it, but it's like our roads would be in good condition if they weren't constantly being kind of, I don't know, that dug up and under attack from all the private residential work. I think that, when you look at Vesper Lane, for example, that was 5-6 years ago. It's in really good shape, but it hasn't really been dug up because the town puts a 5-year moratorium on roads when they're newly paved. After that, it's kind of, all bets are off. And obviously there's certain areas that have a lot more development going on, and thus there's trench after trench after trench, and eventually the best way to address that is full width, full length paving. In a perfect world, we wouldn't also only rely on milling and overlaying of pavement in terms of our pavement management program. And I'm working with environmental partners to establish a program for us to do different types of treatment to get a lot more life out of our existing pavement, and do other types of overlay, not traditionally asphalt, but like cape sealing and chip sealing and things like that, where your money goes a lot further. It's not appropriate on every road, but there are probably some really useful applications on Nantucket.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our approach to it.
All right, can I just do
Yeah, keep going.
all right, well, good to know. I just want to make sure someone's keeping an eye on it and the quality, and all right. As far as potholes, do you guys use Aquafalt?
We do not use Aquafalt.
Have you used it before?
The sewer departments used it in the past. It's a pretty decent product. It is extremely expensive. I think we've here the DPW even tried it in the past, but it wasn't really well received.
Yeah, I've actually used it on my road. And I think it's pretty amazing. I think it sets up really quick. I bought it online for like a I don't know, maybe a 3.5 gallon bucket, and it was maybe $80. But then I find you get it marine for 50. But you could literally send one guy with a few buckets and fill a pothole. And it sets up really quick. It just sets itself with water. And it is, I did it like maybe 5 years ago, and they're spot on. It just become part of the road. It was just something I wanted to bring up because I think it's something that's very accessible. You don't have to, activate all the equipment to get your tar going, and it's really easy and quick. And I'll tell you, it works awesome.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, no, and a product like that from a convenience standpoint is exactly what we would love, to be able to lean on. I talked to Mo about it recently, and he was, I'd say, mixed at best, kind of reviews on it. The other thing is, for you to do one pothole on your road, it's great, right? You just want to buy the one bucket and put it in. We get 3 or 4 or 5 inches of rain, or it's March and it's freeze thaw season. I mean, we're doing 20 or 30 potholes a day when we can get asphalt. We go out and do it, so we might as well just go get 4 tons of asphalt from Victor, drive around and hit them all at once. And so I don't know if I just don't know if it would save us a whole ton of time, because
I get it.
Locations, just using a bucket and not bringing the trailer with you. But
Well, I'm sure you guys have more to do than I do on my road, but it's just, there might be, there just might be a few applications, a small deep pothole that really would kind of work for that product. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of
No, we're always trying to keep our eye out for something cutting edge that is kind of, would be our savior. We use a UPM product. It's like a unique pavement material, but, and that actually holds up really well in the winter. But it actually gets quite soft when it gets heated and when vehicles are turning on it. So, some are better in other applications. If we were a more, kind of steady climate like Southern California, maybe
Yeah.
maybe nobody uses UPM and Aquafall might be the way to go. So
Yeah, I recommend it for just a few applications. See what you think.
Yeah, DIY.
Yeah, yeah.
You're hired, Christie. Sounds like.
I had two
Pete
quick
Kaiser?
bites at the apple. Thank you. Drew, real quick, just also to loop back on something from earlier. So with regards to the road improvement recurring annual request, can you confirm or kind of, it sounded like you had mentioned that some of those funds are used to go and repair roads where we've had sewer installs or water installs, or we have a third-party contractor that goes, installs their pipes, backfills, does their thing. Does some of that funding go to then repair the roads that were, let's say, torn up as part of those contracts?
like you talking about private utility work?
No, like the sewer main project.
No, the fourth main project, for example, would budget for all of their final paving. So no, my budget doesn't go to any of the paving on, say, Surfside, Atlantic, South Shore Road.
So none of those
Main.
$2 or $3 million a year is going towards fixing the roads that are torn up as part of those projects.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if a local contractor digs to replace a sewer service for a house on Quaker Street and they pave when they're done, we require that the pavement hold up for a year.
Yeah.
If it degrades after that, yes, we inherit those problems.
Yeah, sure, right. But those are more small scale private stuff, not any of these larger
Right.
kind of infrastructure projects. Okay, great. Just because I was confused earlier when we were speaking of that. And then this might be a little bit more of a specific kind of observation, but I've noticed a lot more recently in the last couple of years, major kind of depressions in roads around like drainage grates or other manholes that I don't know if that's back to Christie's point, quality of installation of some of those infrastructure items, but like the end, the corner of West Creek and Orange Street, you take a right, massive divot right there, right around a drain grate basin, whatever you want to call it. Same thing was at Parker and Hooper Farm. Take a left off of Hooper Farm onto Parker, massive depression right there where one of those is installed. Is that like, was there some period of time when those are being installed incorrectly, or is that something that you see happening? 'Cause it seems like it's happening more often, and I don't know if that's the quality of the contractors installing them, or if it's something else that's worth mentioning or knowing about or keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both. Traditionally, the buildup, as we call it. So you have a concrete structure below grade, and then you have that metal casting. So it's either frame and grade on a catch basin or like a sewer manhole cover, for example. There's a buildup to bring that up to match the grade of your pavement. Traditionally, that's brick and mortar, and that obviously just degrades over time and starts to settle. I think there's also the misconception that like a catch basin frame and grate needs to be set a couple inches low. Like if water has a 1 millimeter drop, it'll make its way into the catch basin. It can be essentially flush with the road. Like on South Water Street, when that was repaved, I'm not really sure why those, like when the juice bar is behind you and you're heading out towards Easton Street, there's a couple that are set very low, but those are not old. So I feel like that's an installation kind of missed opportunity to do it the right way. Some of the other ones, like I said, kind of just break down. There are other products on the market now. I know that as part of the Force Main project, kudos to Dave Gray. He had heard about this product. It's an HDPE ring, and they can actually be set at the 1%, 2%, 3% crown to match your pavement. And that instead of brick and mortar would go between the top of the concrete structure and the bottom of the casting. They're supposedly great to work with. They're much easier than laying a bunch of brick and dealing with the mortar. As long as they hold up over time, I think they'll be a really useful tool. But yeah, I mean, I share that pet peeve with you. I hit one on Quaker every time I come to the office. There's of course that one in front of Nantucket Auto Body across from the gas station that people swerve to avoid. I would like to bundle a bunch of those together and get a contractor to go kind of fix all of them at once, because I know they are quite a nuisance. And then you have pavement degradation around it, which then becomes kind of a compounding problem.
Yeah, and the two that stuck out in my mind seemed like they were more recently installed, and to your point, fresh asphalt around them that couldn't have been more than it seems like, and I'm no expert, but a couple years old, where the asphalt sinking down, the grates are sinking down lower, deeper, and it's just this, it looks like everything's just kind of sagging in place, and sounds like it's something that's also on your radar, so just.
Sounds like that could be a new line item next year for you, Drew.
I mean,
Joe, I just got a question.
Christie?
Drew, what's the difference between overlay and mill and overlay? Is it just grinding the road, or what's the difference between those two processes?
Yeah, so the milling is the reclaiming of the asphalt. So you take down an inch and a half, 2 inches to provide a fresher
Yeah.
road base. If your top, it's really called the wearing course, is your very top layer of asphalt, and it does take a beating from snow plows and vehicles and sun and rain and cold weather. Typically, if it's in bad shape, you will mill that off and then overlay. There are also opportunities, and actually Victor's going to be doing it next week for us on Sankaty Road. That asphalt's 20, 25, 30 years old. It's actually still in very good shape. It doesn't need to be milled. And so it's an opportunity for us to save the milling cost and just do the overlay. The other thing that's then challenging, and so, which is why just overlay doesn't work in a lot of places, is matching the cobblestone or brick aprons at houses and making sure that we're not impounding water that otherwise would be running out into the road. So it's
Case by case.
they're used in different places, and it doesn't apply everywhere. And we try to be mindful of all of those considerations when planning paving efforts.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Mike, Drew, thank you so much for your time. This was really helpful and informative.
Yeah.
second that.
Thank you all for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
That's great.
Mike, are you still doing transportation? Is that still your field
For the town.
for the
Sure,
town?
yes. For the region, yes.
I have a question, but it's something I'd come in and see you and chat with you for a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Feel free to shoot me an email out too if,
Will do.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Oh,
Okay, next on the agenda is report writing work group. Howard's not here, so I think we can move on from that for right now. The Roy evaluations, I think all the requests I think everybody that's appeared before us, their requests are in, so if
Okay.
you all want to get working on those.
Yeah.
Sue, do you have a date in mind for when we should be finished with those? I thought we said
November sometime.
yeah, I mean, ideally, I think it would be in November, but I thought he actually said December 1 when Steven set it up.
How about we challenge ourselves?
I can't hear you, Sue.
Kind of,
I think you're on mute, Sue. Sorry, honey.
excuse me.
Talking to myself anyway at the moment.
It's okay.
We show November 14th and 21st was Rory Development, and then the 22nd was the preliminary up and down recommendation list would be provided to town admin and select board and finance committee. So it sounds like we'd be wrapping it up by the 21st.
Okay,
Worries about that.
John,
Yeah, Madge, I asked Sue this morning if we had time, if she could put up Aurora on the screen, because I have some questions about some of the columns, and how it relates to the group thing that we did in the beginning.
Mhm.
And the easiest way is if we could put one up and I could ask my questions of the group.
sure, do you all?
I'm
have
fine with
that?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay, Sue, do you have one? you
can't
wanna
promise
pull
we'll
up?
have any very clear answers.
Do a really
Well-
controversial one, though.
Oh, it doesn't really matter which one it is.
Yeah.
It's not about, it's more
I know,
about
but if
what's
you wanted to do a really
Yeah,
controversial.
yeah, okay, let's have a hard one.
Which did you want first, Jeff?
Controversial.
No,
No, I like that.
no, all these, none of these have been controversial this year, I don't think.
John, I will say there has always been conversation about the kind of definitions and the, meanings of the various categories to a certain extent. So that's one of your questions.
Well, so,
And it's resulted in us just basically having slightly different
Interpretations,
variations, interpretations.
and as long as
of
our
each.
own interpretations stay consistent, then the
Correct.
integrity of the model is supported.
yeah, so. There's a little bit of that, but if we could, can you expand that a little
Yeah,
bit?
maybe you might have to maximize that screen.
Screen, there's no way I. is-
Hang on, Joe's trying to do
The
something.
top right box.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah,
Is that helpful?
yeah, so if we start with the column. So I'm looking at an actual Rory.
So
it doesn't
he's
have
looking at a request.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he's
a
not looking at
request,
everybody's results.
yeah,
Can you just
Go into a request.
A request.
Yeah, just do one request is
I was gonna say, that looks a little odd to me.
yeah.
yeah, well, we're all at zero, so.
Yeah. Except for,
I thought this was, you wanted me to bring up the Rory screen.
Just the request screen, the
Oh,
one,
Like almost
Oh,
as if you
if
were
I'm-
doing.
yes.
it.
a Rory 4 request.
Yeah, just pick one.
you wanna see the.
If
yeah,
you-
it doesn't really matter which.
There you
the-
go. There you go.
Yeah, so, but it's one where you fill it in though, so
Yeah, so-
I'm looking, this is what I'm looking.
She might
Yeah,
not
okay.
Hey,
have,
Sue, it's a my Rory, so
She
if you
might
hit
not
my
have-
Rory, I think then it comes up.
she might not have access to it.
I
It's
do,
not just do
She
you?
does.
hang on, yes, sorry.
She's done Rory
Yeah, there you go.
before.
Yeah,
Rory.
okay,
That's what we're talking
okay.
That's what you want, yeah?
Yeah, so if you can pull that out a little bit. So if we start with the column that's criterion, relevance, ratios as a percentage and CR and of G.
Mhm.
Can somebody just explain to me what each one of those columns is? What does CR, what actually is that? What percentage is that?
You want me to take a stab at it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if you look at the CR, so if first let's go over to group. So essentially you have continuity A, continuity B, cost and resilience. So you have 4 separate groups, correct?
Yeah,
And so CR, if you look at that column, has the percentages that each of those 3 lines
These 3 add up to 100.
add up to 100.
These 2 add up to 100,
Those,
right?
yeah,
These 3,
4.
4 add up to 100, and these 3 add up to 100.
So those are the proportions of each line within the group of that group.
yeah,
Now then you go to the next, and that's the proportion of each line as it relates to the entirety of all the lines.
Of these.
okay, explain that again.
No, but within this, yeah,
No,
with the whole line.
The
Oh, you
whole
mean
line.
the whole consideration?
the whole consideration, yes,
Yes,
sorry.
exactly.
The whole consideration of
The
what?
whole request from
So-
all the lines from top
so
to bottom.
this
So if this went to the bottom,
So this is really what gets, I think it looks like it gets weighted the most.
Yes,
So this is like, I don't want to say it's the most important question, but it's what weights everything the most.
it's the highest weight of all, what is it, 3, 5, 9? So there's 12 total individual lines, correct?
yeah,
So that top one, required to maintain necessary function, is a 25.9% weight of the entirety of those 12 lines
And then this particular,
but it's 73%.
of just group A, continuity A,
Yeah,
yeah. And then this whole group is 34.5%.
of the entirety
All
of the
groups.
consideration.
So this, it looks like on this one, this is the most important. group.
Also, yes. So continuity A is 34.5% of the weight of the entire 100% of consideration for this request. Continuity B is 17 points.
For this particular.
Request.
Request.
Just this
Yes,
request,
and
yeah.
it'll be.
And that's
different.
based on.
So that
work we all did.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
and it was how important is this one relative to this one? How important is this one relative to this one? How important is this one relative to this one?
And that's the part that,
We can't
Because
change.
we weighted these questions. Right, what was important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm trying to get to is, I'm not exactly convinced that this is all based on that half an hour of work, and I can tell you there were two of us sitting next to one another that really didn't know what we were doing.
Right,
And I don't mean that in any other way than we're both new.
It's complex.
Like
Yeah.
somebody's like saying, fill in this form, fill in that. And two of us were sitting here, and yet that's become the base of
Mhm.
everything we're gonna do. And that troubles me. I'll go along with it, but it troubles me
Did
that.
you wanna fill yours out again? I mean, these are.
That's a question I asked, that's a question I asked Sue, whether I could,
Does it,
but
because
it-
it will just populate on its own, won't it, if he could redo his?
but it isn't just me, though. I mean,
Well, you're
yeah,
speaking for you.
yeah.
I think in in another respect, so those are representative of all of our results combined, not just yours. First and
Yeah,
foremost.
yeah.
And so
He
The-
feels like he weighted it incorrectly.
you rated yours, which I guess has a 1/6 of a reflection of the average, which is reflected in the Rory. Also, the question is, do you ever think that going through that process, you'll get to 100% accurate reflection of how you feel about all these? Do you think you'll ever be able to get there?
I'm not looking to answer that, because I don't know. But I do know that it isn't 1/6, it's 1/3, because,
Or
Right.
John, how do you know you don't have some accuracy?
oh,
Because you really haven't even done these yet.
no, but what I'm trying to get to, guys,
Yeah.
is I'm a process guy. And if I don't understand the process, or it's not making sense to me,
Well, and
I like
there's
that.
no committee that does anything like this.
no, there isn't.
So that's why we're, no, but I didn't like it at first, I didn't. I didn't understand it or whatever, and then I spent hours and hours with Rick Searson. Explain it to me, which was very kind of him, but that being said, I think this helps you not make a completely political decision when we decide what's gonna move forward.
Or play
It
favorites
gives
or.
you a framework, right, or think, oh, I like that presentation, or I like it, if there's a framework here. That's what I
Yeah.
like about it, it kind of keeps me
Like, I'll
on the
just,
bike path.
yeah, I mean, I'll say what's on my mind, and I'm not looking to change this either. This is just, but I'm just saying what's on my mind. It feels, but then I do need to come back to what I'm supposed to put in there, the green column.
Mhm.
It feels like we are looking to mathematical formulas to do more than what good discussion, item by item, might get us. It seems to me that we're all about the forms and the formulas, and we're less about the discussion.
Yeah.
And maybe that's
Can I
gonna
respond to
change.
that though? What happened last year and what I would be open to is, once we've done them and they're in a spreadsheet again, we have a framework for discussion. And if you wanna go back and change yours, or you're like, ugh, or you wanna say, hey, I don't know who in here weighted this way and I weighted it differently, but could we have a conversation about that particular request?
So to John's point, I like that, but to some extent, and just some points, we have relied on this heavily.
Mhm.
And very lightly relied on discussion. And I always was happy to say, hey, we're discussing a request. These are my scores.
Yeah.
Like, and you might have something totally different. I want to know why, because if you have something that you picked up, I'm convincible. So
Yeah,
I'm convincible. And if we do talk, I'm not gonna figure that out, what your thoughts are on that request by looking at your Rorys.
Is that so much a function of the fact we don't do it, or the function that we've never allocated the time, or people haven't requested for specific requests that we have that? I mean, I don't think anyone's saying we can't have any discussion about any of these.
No,
don't
I
that's
think
ever been
it's a
the-
little both. Yeah,
Yeah,
this,
we didn't have discussions, so that didn't happen, and I agree that it would be good. I still like this system to give you a framework to, and then you can see, wow, how you weighted things. But we absolutely will discuss these before that report is written.
yeah, and it might be, it might be case by case. There might be obvious ones
Yes.
that we clearly don't need to discuss a
So,
Bobcat. But we do
Well,
need to discuss
right.
Baxter Road, I don't know.
I'm fairly certain that we did that last year and we've done that every
He
year now.
He the stuff that was 50% and up, we said that went into the hopper.
Well, we would still
But then
allow
we talked
people,
about stuff that was more like 40%, that 40 to 50 and even lower. I think those we did talk about.
This did steer us in a direction of what to discuss.
yes.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, we would go down every single request and say, everybody good, everybody good, everybody good, everybody good. No, you want to talk it? All right, put an X next to it, everybody good. I mean, we do that despite the fact that we already have our rankings for each
Well,
one.
you mean we already have, or we're gonna get a chance to
No,
do
you're going
that?
to get a chance. The way that Stephen did it in the
Yeah.
past is he did it after you ranked it though. And I think what Christie's talked about is
Right, after
maybe
they were
talking it before you ranked it, because maybe that would influence your
I
ranking.
think
And
so.
maybe we
Right.
as a committee should decide which way we want to go with that. Like, do you want both?
But
Good.
guys, I'm not asking you to like change it now for this year. I'm really not. I'm just trying to give you a new person's perspective on when I walk out of these things, I start thinking, boy, I wish we could have more dialogue about things more than so.
Well, you know what used to happen too, and it happens a little bit, but the requests used to come in, instead of them plugging in to the form, they used to have a lot more narrative in what their requests were. So that's
Yeah.
changed a little bit. That's nothing that we do. It's just,
Yeah.
that's changed somewhat. It's now sort of, this is
But we
what it
can-
costs, this is what it
yeah.
is, but there's less like narrative, and you, like, sometimes with the Rorys and the information you get from it, it doesn't really, you don't get the
But that is
department
something,
heads
yeah.
really feel for it.
But that
You know,
is
it's just-
something at the end of this cycle, we can say, okay, well, for the next cycle, we want to get a little more from
Yeah.
Well, and that is what's good about being a public liaison to
Yeah.
a certain organization, that you want to
Yeah.
learn a little bit more about how they do things. It does help, because I think you get a little bit more of that color.
Yeah, see, because I think, and I'm not saying it's correct, I'll just tell you how I go about things. So the first thing I did was, I went through them all. And I ranked, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, that generally, whether it's 80% of cost comes down to 20% of the projects, or 80% of the revenue comes down to, it generally works, and it works for me. And that's what I did. And that got me to, I didn't go through this Rory by Rory. I went to the 20% that's getting me 80% of the cost. And that's where, to this point, that's where I focus my effort. A lot of effort though, I spent a lot of time going over that 20% and going back to the notes I'd made, going back to looking at the sheets, because that 20% is where 80% of all this money is going in the end.
Oh, you mean the overall?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So you're looking at the
Well,
big,
it's
the
a-
big ticket items? you're
Yes, and
saying?
I did the big ticket items by department though, so it's not like,
You didn't
Yeah.
lump our own.
No.
More than 20%.
So,
of
the
cost
schools
business.
I went to the 80% of the school's cost and look, or 20%, 80% of their cost. And it always comes down to about 20% of the project. I did, and so, I've got my sheets for every department. For me, a good process for this is to start with that, dig down, because maybe the process for that 20% of the projects that make up 80% of the cost, maybe that's a different process to the rest. Maybe that is much more of a dialogue process, because you're doing a lot less, but the impact that we're having though is huge. you know,
Mhm.
and, so, you know, I'm doing in my own world of preparation for this. That's what I'm doing. I'm really focusing on the 20% that are going to take up the most money.
You mean for just your own
Yeah,
investigation?
just
and
my
looking
own,
at
but I,
the
but I
supplemental
think, you
documents
know,
and spending
I think
time
is
on it?
if we ever have a debrief at the end of a process, this annual process, it's something that we might want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well,
might help you to go through the process
because-
this year and then
Oh, yeah,
you'll
for
keep
sure.
having
Yeah,
more feedback.
and that's
for
why I
sure.
keep saying, I'm not looking to like throw a monkey wrench into
I
this.
believe me, when I first started, I was like, you do what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
it was really kind of
So,
shocking, but I
so
I
that's
like
really what I
the
wanted to
concept.
say. I hope we, if for the next cycle, that we have a chance at some point to talk about some of these things and decide whether or not we want to change the process.
No,
a little bit.
I think, I mean, we have an opportunity, this cycle, we can certainly, you know,
Say it.
present discussion,
Oh, yeah.
more discussion. Peter's right. We certainly have had opportunity to discuss them. But it's also true that it was after we had voted and we sort of were
Yes.
reactionary
Yeah,
to our thoughts on the request. But I think you know, in defense of Stephen, he wanted us to score those requests based on our own criteria
Exactly.
and then discuss it.
On a
You know.
level playing field.
Yeah, he just wanted us to
Criteria.
each have our own impression of what the criteria was, you know, what's our, you know, and then come in. He doesn't want us to all vote exactly the same way.
Exactly. That's the point. The
Yeah.
process isn't, let's
Yeah.
all talk about it so we can all come to the same exact conclusion, then input the same Rory. So that we all are in agreement on what the outcome is. The process is we all interpret it. We all are from different parts of the community. We all represent different people, different interests, different priorities, things that we agree with, things that we don't. And we are consistent in those individual principles by the way that we rank our own Rorys. And then when it spits out a number for one request and says, this is how the six of you who consistently interpret things the same way individually, this is how the six of you came to this score. Now
Yeah.
go ahead and discuss it. And if I'm the person that thinks it should be a 70 and everyone else thinks it's a 50, and I say, hey, I want to figure out why I thought this is a 70 and the combined score is a 53. So I'm gonna ask you guys to try to give me some insight.
Yeah, and I think
And I can tell that John doesn't necessarily agree with that.
and John,
I'm more of of what, Christie said, you know, for me, it's better to have the conversation. It's not like I'm looking to change your mind or you change mine. It's for me to understand why. Because if you're thinking about something and I'm not you know, I just never even thought about that, you know, then I'd like to be able to put my Rory score in. No,
so that will happen. This, whatever we score, and Jill's right, this is 100% a framework. This does allow us to say, these are clearly ones that we all agree on. They're easy requests. It gives us a framework. Even with that framework, that's not set in stone. We can have a discussion on something and it could be the top, the highly, you know,
Could be an 80, and
it
you
could
make
be
a
an
good
80, it
point,
could
and
be
we're all
a
like,
10.
great point, you know what, we shouldn't
But
recommend
we
that.
can
and
still
let's do that.
discuss, we still have the opportunity to bring it up and discuss it. If one member thinks there's a discussion point on an item, I think that's fair game, right?
Well,
100%.
here's a perfect example. Our home. I don't know how that's gonna score in this group. I really don't, but we're gonna discuss it. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna
Yeah,
get discussed,
yeah.
even if it gets 100, it's gonna get discussed.
Yeah.
If it's a 1, it's gonna get discussed.
Yeah.
Because it's a priority for the town.
And so I think a lot of the discussion that we had years ago, whenever, before we'd input our Rorys, is more details about the specific request. Like, hey, I didn't understand this
Yeah.
part of the Tom Nevers bike path. You know, they got a
Yeah.
$3.2 million grant. Is that part of this request? You know, kind of what we have the ability to do a little bit, but I think one of the issues was the requests have gotten the lists have gotten so long and the meetings have gotten so long that we don't have that time at the end of the meeting, so an hour and a half, we need to allocate another hour and a half to discuss
Yeah.
every request, which is an unfortunate reality of just the process and.
Yeah.
Yeah, mind you, this was all pre-Zoom, you know, so
Yeah.
things were a little more personal.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it
then,
was really
you know,
different, cause you were
Yeah,
on.
I
this
don't want to
committee.
keep you guys too long. Can I just? So I just want to make sure
Yeah.
now that I'm
Yeah,
doing
fair
it the way I'm supposed to be doing
Yeah.
it, whether I agree with it or not. How am I supposed to be doing it? So, because I know I've done it wrong, but it doesn't matter because I've done all my thought process. So
Right.
to go back and change what goes in there, I've only put them in as drafts right now. So what I did, which was wrong, was I took, say, our island home, say,
Mhm.
and I looked at
Make it
all of
easier.
this, and I put, it's a bad example, but if there is any kind of way that money is going to get spent, it's probably because of something that looks a bit like that. You know, it's not a financial thing at all. It's about, we look after our old people and,
Mhm.
you know, this is an island and, you know, so I've got like a huge number in there.
100%.
Right,
Yeah, and that's the point, Peter. So this always, for me, is adding up to 100. And I realize now that's not right. That's not what I'm
each
saying.
section should add up to 100, is that what you mean?
The way I've done it
Hmm.
is I've looked at our island home and said it's 80 of this and 10 of that.
Oh,
and 10
right,
of this.
you
and
thought you
it's
were
always- it's a-
prioritizing.
Yeah.
So the percents are actually what percent of the column next to it, you're saying it is applicable to?
Correct, do
Okay,
not think
so that
about,
actually
do not
it's
think,
not wasted work then.
No,
no,
doesn't sound like it.
but don't, yeah, like Peter said, don't think about trying to add up to 100%, because it is relative to,
Well, let's just keep with that example.
Okay.
So our island home for this, so I probably put like 80, and then I probably had 20 down there. So that 80 then.
Yeah. That's saying that you think it's 80% applicable to that singular line, heritage, tradition, legacy, and culture. Sounds like you would have had probably a 100% in that
Well,
line.
let's just say I did have 100
Yeah.
there.
It would contribute 6.1% to your overall score because you're accounting for
Oh.
100% of that 6.1%.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's more your,
Group.
So, yeah, okay,
Right.
so I've got 100.
you put 100 there, that GRORI should be 6.1 to the right.
Right. And is that what I put in there? 6.1?
Nope, you would put 100% in
It'll
that.
populate it for
Yeah,
you.
it should. Well, that's the wrong line, but see, so,
Sue just did that.
and now maybe put 0.8 in that one too.
Yeah, see, Johnny, see how it's populated
Yeah.
6.1?
Hey, so can you quickly put up one of mine? It doesn't matter which one.
I can't do yours individually.
She can't pull yours.
Oh,
Yeah,
I mean, you wanna just
Only as
look
a
at
group.
it on mine, or we can look at it on yours and check?
yeah, okay,
And
so,
I can pull you up one of mine, more than happy.
Let's-
no, let's do one of mine, because then that way I can, okay, so let's do. So here's the. So. Let's take.
get a good one.
Let's take like a-
the airport.
Let's take like a new
The airport housing project?
Yeah, okay, well, take, water's not good because it's all, that's, these big numbers are. Okay, let's take HMP, so how do I get into that?
So I would probably go over here and search just HMP, they all pop up, and then which one is it? 22,003, this
Yeah,
one, 15,000.
5 million,
Oh yeah, fiscal year cost, 5120.
yeah, pull mine up for that,
5120, so there's that. So that brings you in, now you go to my Rory,
yeah,
this is where it should be saving your Rory, right, okay, so you put 100% combined between all of
Yes.
these.
yeah.
So in reality, do you think that this project is, required to maintain whatever necessary function it's related to? I don't know what this
can't
request even
remember, yeah.
is. Law,
But
Saskatchewan
see-
Pond Living Shoreline Construction.
So I put that 60 in, meaning that,
Required to meaningfully
Yeah,
prevent
yeah,
degradation
yeah.
of.
yeah, that's
function.
kind of 60% of the reason for doing it.
Okay, so, I mean, and this is a little bit extra, behind the scenes, but so typically. These are, what would you call it? Like
Entries?
priorities are kind of highest, middle and lowest here. And so if you have something that's a high priority, by definition, it also would cover a medium and a low priority because it's a high priority.
But
So-
you want that to come to 100. though.
Exactly.
Yes.
So in this case, if you don't think it's required to maintain necessary function, like whatever you're funding is that whatever the specific purpose is going to be just in shambles, is not gonna
Right.
work at all. We need to 100% replace it to avoid that degradation of that necessary function, to maintain that necessary function.
Right.
So if you don't believe it's gonna do any of that, you put a 0 there, 0%, so it
Yeah.
gets 0 allocation of this
Of the-
25.9
Yeah.
to the
okay.
full bottom line. Then if you think, well, it's about a 60% required to meaningfully prevent degradation. So you think, it's not, it's not 100%, but
Mm.
it's, halfway there. 60% gives you 4.1 of that 6.8, because 4.1 is 60% of that, 6.8.
Yeah.
And then in theory, and it used to automatically do this, I don't know why it doesn't
I
anymore.
know it did use so.
But since you have anything that's a medium priority, let's call it, you would have 100% low priority, because medium supersedes
Yeah.
all of low. And so even if you thought this was a 10, this would be 100 and this would be 100
By default.
by default. And it
default.
used to default like that.
Yeah.
And so there's only two that used to do that, and it's these three, high, medium, and low, and then it's obviously,
And then the,
did we switch those?
yeah, well.
We
it says
did, used to be
positive
major and minor, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so those are the only three that actually have that kind of hierarchical relationship.
Got it.
But so that covers continuity A. You think, all right, 50% prevents degradation and obviously allows for enhancement to function. Because if you're preventing degradation, you're enhancing the function.
For the, yeah,
So for heritage, tradition, legacy, maybe you think that, Nantucket maritime community, there's tradition and legacy in maintaining the shoreline of Sacagawea Pond. So you think, all right, you know what, that's a 75, because that's 75% in line with Nantucket's heritage,
Yeah.
tradition, legacy, culture. Replacement accounted for within CIP. Is this a replacement of something? Is it a scheduled replacement? Not really. It's like they're going there, taking something out and putting the same thing back in, new and improved. So you could put a 0. Maybe you could put a 10.
Okay, so this doesn't have to add to 100.
no, these are all, okay, so these are kind of relative to each other.
Yeah.
All these others are fairly independent of each other. They're all standalone, kind of individually, but
Right.
you,
These you can do it
yeah,
that way,
and-
but these you can't.
and you put your percents in 0 to 100% on how you feel about that particular line item. As Peter said, this first one will default itself.
It should, it
It
doesn't
should.
anymore, but you have to
Okay.
put in the hundreds
Got
and
it.
any
Well,
below.
let's tell you
Got
what
it.
it doesn't then. So
Pick one.
can we do resilience, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
again, you could have 100 for all three of these. That just means that it's gonna score 10.1 for this one, 9.5 for
You're gonna
this
give
one,
the full-
4.1
Right.
for that one.
Yeah,
Okay, so it doesn't have to be 100. Well, this doesn't total anyway.
It doesn't have to total 100%,
Right.
and they can all be anything individually between 0 and 100.
Got it.
And so is it an infrastructure, and you probably did these right, like infrastructure improvement? Yeah, it's an improvement to infrastructure. They're not roads and sidewalks, but
Right.
it's shoreline, which is important. So you give it, say 20%. I'd probably do, 50%, whatever. It's a round figure.
But isn't that, I mean, is it an improvement? how can-
Infrastructure improvement.
How can it not be an improvement?
Well, that's what I'm saying, 50%. I mean, because it probably could be a better
Yeah.
improvement, maybe.
Because
and-
sometimes it's hard to think of it, John. It's like, it's either yes or no.
But that's where, as
Yeah.
long as I'm ranking mine consistently and you're ranking yours
Yeah.
consistently, getting into why we
Yeah,
disagree
yeah.
with the
That's the
definition
defi-
is
Yeah.
just a never ending, waste of
Right.
time.
Right.
well, like reduces costs. I mean, none of these capital projects are reducing costs. They're all
Unless
adding
it's like,
costs
we're
by-
putting in low voltage lights, or we're buying an electric vehicle that replaces the gas
There's-
power,
yeah.
like.
But
Yeah,
they're not
what's the end
many of
result?
those.
What's, yeah, 'Cause
Yeah.
obviously the effort is always gonna cost.
Right.
You
And
gotta
I-
think of,
I'm very broad in my, I'll give something like a 10% accommodation for reduces energy consumption because they're better light bulbs. isn't gonna
Or
really
EV
impact the
car, or an
overall,
EV
yeah,
car.
Yeah,
exactly.
okay, so putting in the 20% is perhaps not incorrect. But it's, what it should be is it's of this, it's none of the total, isn't it? I was doing the total. So when we say here, so if I think it's
You see, John,
just 20% of.
Just of
sort
this,
that.
just of this thing right
Yeah,
here.
Yeah,
You know, if there's something that is, if DPW fleet has a scheduled replacement list. And you're replacing a car that's
Yeah.
on it, I would give that 100% for replacement accounted for.
Yeah.
Because they 100% have had that vehicle getting replaced in fiscal year
Exactly.
26.
also, you don't need to think in the green, you don't need to think about adding up to 100%.
No.
Because you already did that. This line will dictate whatever you put in there, this line, 100%, which that's what we did in group,
Yeah,
will dictate that 100%
right,
of your vote.
okay,
And I'm not gonna
That-
say
that
there's
will
no,
dictate it.
I'm not gonna say there's no wrong answer, but a lot of it is up to your own interpretation of the project and how it relates to these different
Yeah.
criteria.
yeah,
Because some people might say, I think this one is 100%, meaningfully,
All right.
prevents degradation. And someone else might say, well, I
But-
think it's 10% because, it's not
But
really.
these are a little more confusing because they are relative to
Yes.
each other. And these are more like straight line
Just
items.
one-off.
Where you're like, I like it, I don't.
It's kind of standalone, even though they're under the same group,
Yeah.
So
you don't
any
have
of
to-
these can be 0 to 100% and
Right.
without giving any recognition to what the ones above them or below them are.
right,
Those ones, even if you could have 4 100s in this cost group right here, and it's totally fine.
got it.
They don't have to add up to anything. They don't
Right.
have to, look at
And
one. and
why
it's-
is that different for these two?
So these three, because these are kind of prioritized high, medium, and low. And by definition, if something's a high priority, then it's already been covered as a medium and a low priority.
Yeah,
Like if something's a high priority, you're saying,
100.
yeah, so if something is
Oh.
a 50 up here, it's on, you should be putting in 100 and 100 here, because by definition, something that's a high priority is at least a medium and is
Yeah,
definitely
you're
a
not
low
gonna,
priority.
you're not gonna think it's a less moderate, priority.
And so you really just need to make sure that these other percentages for medium and low are accounted for when you give it credit for any amount of high priority.
got it,
So it
got it.
gets that
Okay.
whole priority.
Closer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
seems a very complicated way to get.
Well, it is, but
Right,
it's,
yeah.
Well, that way, if you look at the percentage of what it is, that can really guide you, like
Yeah,
what's gonna score, if I really want it. What should I score the
Also,
strongest? Percentage.
was this in place Brian Turbot being the
No,
finance?
Stephen.
no, this
Steven
was,
developed
this was, Brian was before this.
Yeah. Because Brian was there when Steve developed this.
Yeah.
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 And I mean, I will say before this, it was probably exactly what you are referring to now, which was people would come in, they'd give their presentation, we would sit around and say, anybody have any kind of questions? And 9 times out of 10, it was, nope, good,
Yeah,
thumbs up.
Yeah,
And there wasn't really any,
there wasn't
Checks
a
and-
mechanism to talk about it, and that's what I like about it. I think it's putting it.
and there,
Taking some of the personalities out of it a little bit
Yeah.
and saying, hey, is this the right thing?
and there weren't
We're here right
necessarily
now.
any checks and balances to whether or not someone just says, well, I like that project because, it's fixing a road outside my house, so I'm gonna vote it up. Or it's, I like that one because it's, a sewer and I'm on septic and I want sewer running by my house.
Yeah.
no,
I
I-
like
you
that.
know, like I said, I'm just, I need to understand what I'm doing and I
Yeah.
need to believe that it's adding value.
No, I'm glad we talked about it because
Yeah.
it
And
is a
we've
little
got
different
that.
this year. It
We've
doesn't
got
have
your
the
3-year
median.
commitment,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, about 3 years.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
So after the first year, when
Yeah.
you understand everything, now we
No,
have for 2
yeah,
more.
but there is another thing though about this that, and this is just an observation, but things
Do
like,
tell.
well, our island home.
Very
Actually,
difficult one.
yeah, but it's probably not gonna make any difference at all. Well,
Also, sure.
And
Not
then,
any difference, but, you know.
yeah, very little. The 14 million for the Tacoma Green. You know, there's enough. You know, I'm seeing enough of how these things are going along in the planning board and other places.
Mhm.
It's not going to make much difference what we say about that either. You know, it's the big ticket ones that, and this is where my 80-20 thing goes straight down the toilet, right? Because the big ticket ones are getting focus a different way than
Yeah,
our committee.
definitely.
Yeah, they're getting power out of this good,
Yeah,
yes.
so
Definitely.
I'm not
But-
saying there's
But
no.
at the same time, the smaller things that we do send forward, they often don't call the capital
Very good.
projects on that line item in the
Mm.
warrant. And so I do think it makes a difference because we've kind of.
Oh, yeah, no,
explained that and
yeah,
moved it forward.
no, and I,
And those big ticket items, they're being debated by the voters at town meetings, so.
And at the ballot, a lot of times.
And the ballot,
Which
so.
is really where, you know, if you think $14 million for employee housing, how are citizens gonna?
no, but what I mean is when at the town meeting, when they say, well, you know, the planning board comment is, the finance committee, you know, comment is, there's nobody saying the capital committee.
That's
comment
because
is.
ours goes forward to them, but we can put in our
Yeah.
report what we think if something doesn't score high, and yet we know it's probably
Yeah.
gonna go. And I did already think about that last week, like, do we want to make that comment or not? And I think we can talk
Yeah.
about that a little more later after we see people's scores,
Yeah.
which
And,
is a
you know,
reminder to do your scores earlier, and then we can have more time on the back end to talk
Yeah,
about.
no, I
it if
like
you
to
want.
try to get them done.
So,
It's definitely held us up.
and I
in the
agree
past.
with something you said, Peter, for me, you know, you gotta go through a full year cycle.
Well, I was
Yeah, you do.
echoing, you know, yeah, your
You
sentiment
know,
as well.
can't,
yeah,
you know,
I
I'm
can
kind of,
appreciate it for 2 years, I don't think.
Yeah.
And then I was like,
it's-
oh God, I
it's-
love this thing. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's a tool that, to your point, allows for starting point for conversation. Instead of just here's the request, let's all just start.
So,
saying, "Oh,
with
look,
that
I
said,
know. This is why, this is
yeah.
why."
with that said now, John, note, because Stephen always gives us an opportunity at the end of each session or season to talk about what changes do you want to make, or what do you think is some comments on the process.
Yeah.
So make notes
I will.
on things that
I will.
you feel would be helpful.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
will.
because sometimes a new set of eyes is better than.
Well, yeah,
you know.
because no, I definitely will. I
Yeah.
definitely will. There's another part of that though, I wanted to ask about. So,
With regard to Rory's.
no, this is a more of a general, like, business question. So, you know, we look at this department by department, and that's correct, but it's already though, you know, I'm already seeing there are a couple of 3 areas that the town would benefit if the requirements were pulled. For example, security cameras. We have security cameras at the airport, the school, the
Fire, police.
everywhere.
Sheriffs.
You know, we shouldn't. I think at least we should be looking at that and say, okay, so what is our security camera like? What's our footprint? How many of them? Where are they? What are
But
the
those-
issues?
What's the big
But-
picture?
but-
Yeah, what's the big
but-
picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, but those do have different requirements for each place. The police security cameras, you heard him say that, they're different. than the
Well,
ones
yeah,
at the
but
school.
see, they're different. When I hear that, I say, well, tell me how it's different.
I don't know if it's in our purview though. to
No,
be
no.
Trying to.
No, that's what I'm
Like
saying.
that's-
No, it's,
But
you
that
know,
is-
I understand. that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that I would love to have.
But
have an
I'm
ask
just
question.
passing on, if this was a business, you wouldn't let 5 different people be.
I know, but
So-
All
can I
laptops.
just interject on
Yeah.
that? It's not. And I see this a lot in the committees. This is my own personal view, John, so don't, that a lot of people come into a committee and they think I want to run it like a business, and it's not. The rules are totally different. If it was run like a business, we wouldn't have procurement, which just really messes things up. And, you know, it's not top down like that.
Oh, no,
especially
that's
if we
not what
have,
I
like-
mean. I definitely don't mean that.
Yeah,
I mean, though, that, you know, laptops is another good example. you know, laptops are these days are a commodity. They're not like this one is really different to that one. The use of it might be different, but we ought to be looking at like how many laptops are we buying a year? And I don't mean us. I really, this is not about us. This is, as I look at this, you know, if I was Libby, these are some of the things I'd be asking myself. And so I would like to be able to, you know, those kind of subjects in our report somewhere.
See, I don't know. if those-
We have the opportunity to ask that of each department head. What, you know, and you need to be satisfied by the answer, otherwise that can be
Yeah, it's not-
one of your points.
So the thing about that is though, you're unlikely to get the answer from a department head. You're more likely to get the answer from Libby or Brian, you know, someone who's got
Mhm.
the.
Well,
overview,
Sue knows
overview.
lots, so you can always ask her.
Well, yeah.
Starting point too.
This is why I actually enjoy this, because it's given me a lot of insights into
Yes.
some things that could be done perhaps differently in the town.
And I think voicing recommendations from, you know, personal expertise is one thing, but I also don't know if it's necessarily the time or the place to try to discuss direct changes to departments, policies and procedures.
Right.
Through the avenue of reviewing a capital request.
No,
And I don't disagree with, you know, I'm sure there's a dozen things that you probably would see throughout this process where you say, if I was the department head, I would be thinking about doing this differently or that differently. And I don't know if it's
Yeah.
reviewing capital requests is the right avenue for making
So-
those recommendations.
so, you know, Peter, I'm looking at it this way. You know, I come to this group and it's good and I'm learning stuff. I go to the planning board, I'm learning stuff. I go to the NEPDC and I'm learning stuff.
Mhm.
I have a voice, which an independent voice,
Okay.
which as I take all this stuff, I will be voicing it.
Of course.
I will be.
Oh, that's
voicing it.
that's the nice thing
Yeah.
about random committee members,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
So,
I have a question for Sue.
Yeah,
Sue,
Sue.
if I could. Sue, do you guys ever come across requests come across your desk that are smaller items under 50,000, which is that still the threshold for a capital item? Like if someone's grouping product equipment, et cetera, that is each item is under 50,000, but they're grouping it to qualify as a capital item. Do you guys ever come across that?
It was like the
There's-
school,
there's-
right? With
there's
the doors
they
and,
have,
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
And
so
We
I'm just
actually-
curious, do they get a slap on the wrist or is that is that okay?
Okay, fair.
Situation would be unique.
But they're taking stuff out of the operating budget.
Yeah, one second.
Right. You have to first determine, is it truly a capital, by them lumping it together, it's not about the dollar value, is it a
Yeah.
related item, or is it an operating budget item?
Yeah. Right,
Right.
You have to kind of look at each unique.
okay. No,
So it's $100,000 worth of paper and pencils, probably operating. If it's $100,000 worth of doors and locks, the question is, are those
Yeah.
capital? Are they repairs and
Well, you say
maintenance that
like,
should be
yeah, doors and
operating?
locks, and we're gonna buy a basketball hoop, like, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, but I mean,
I guess it's something for us to, you know, question if I see it.
I think every
There's
year,
been a few
there's-
things that have come up that are similar to that.
every year, I feel like there's a couple that are kind of pulled out, like,
Yeah.
and we end up having a conversation and then we ultimately move forward with the request, but.
Yeah,
Again, I think that's probably more of a policy and procedural thing that is best to be looked at the. You know, to your point, town finance level, if they
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
flag them, filter them and say, hey, like,
Yeah.
what's the actual
Wait
breakdown of
till you get
these?
into how they fund it. That's a whole other.
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Which isn't a test either, so.
Okay, sorry,
All right, guys.
I digress.
Any committee reports? Our next meeting is next Thursday, 3 p.m. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
What is that? Do you know? Does it say what that is, Sue? What next meeting is?
Oh, yeah, who's coming next week, Sue?
Believe it's continuation in DPW, it is DPW Central Fleet and Facility.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, so we've already got that. Mhm.
I purposely did it that way to just give you the bigger picture of DPW instead of piecemealing it each
Yeah,
week.
yeah, no, that's fine.
Do we know when the airport are coming back? Yeah,
Have you heard back from Noah?
That was a discussion that we needed to, at 2 dates at the end of October, the 24th or 31st, but, the airport manager needs to move the time up to 2 o'clock.
Oh, right. But were you able to get this room at 2 o'clock?
Not checked that until I made sure that we could.
Do you want to do that the 24th or the 31st? The 31st is Halloween, so I don't know if y'all are gonna go downtown. You're definitely.
I'm definitely going downtown, yes.
So why don't you wanna go for the 24th, the week before?
It's good for me, 2 weeks,
Yeah,
2
we
weeks
did,
from today,
yeah.
3 weeks from today.
Yep, and say 2 PM on the 24th, Sue, can we try for that with the airport?
Yes, I will get back to Noah. We also have sewer on the 24th, but perhaps we take the airport first and then
Yeah,
David Gray
yeah.
schedule.
Okay,
it would be. g- Madam
Sue,
Chair, it
thank
would be-
you.
It would be good if.
thanks for coordinating all that. I know it's a lot.
Madam Chair, it would be good if we could get him to send us. Because this is a very detailed, like what was in this, what was in that. He can now send us something ahead of time.
Yeah, maybe it's scheduled for him to send us.
Right, I mean, it would be definitely much more
Yeah,
better flow of the conversation,
Not the
I'm
day
sure.
So
before.
can he add in those things to our supplemental document, Sue? Is that the way to go?
I did request that when I relayed to him that the committee would like him to come back, and he said he would get those to us in advance.
Okay, great, thank
Because
you.
I'm guessing even after he sends it, there might be more questions to give him before he comes in, instead of just trying to go do the back and forth for an hour.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
on your motion.
All right,
Aye.
aye.
Jill, thank you, Sue, thanks for
Nice.
your patience.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
thank you all.
And
Good.
Nice one.